just down the road from where I live is a family group of hares, and I love them. I just love them to bits, and it's just a happy coincidence that the hares are quite commercial. So I bought myself a really nice camera, and I sit there for hours on end, sort of happily snapping these hares. Well, there's usually quite a big gap from when I've sat and watched the hares to when it actually translates through to some sort of image. This photograph is not exactly as it appears here. There are two hares coming in, sort of touching noses, and I took that photograph about a year ago, and then kind of it somehow processes through subconsciously, I think, and then I sit down with my sketchbook and I start drawing out quite simple line drawings to work out a composition which will work well in that format. So you've got your resource material, you've formed your composition, remembering everything is back to front, and I trace it down because tracing is the easiest way to flip an image without too much kind of involvement. So you trace the image down, and then a collage is based on collage, based on a process of collage. And you can get involved in sticking all sorts of things down, but I tend to keep it much simpler. The hairs are cut into the board, and with a collage, the rougher the texture, the more ink it holds, so the darker tone you get. The less ink the texture holds, so the shinier it is, the less ink it holds, so the lighter tone you get. So the hairs are cut into the board and peeled. I've peeled the surface off, so you get this fluffy texture, and then I've drawn into the plate with PVA glue to pull out the highlights, and sort of drawn into the PVA with the pencil to get that sketchy quality. So when you ink it up, the ink wipes off those areas, so you get the lighter areas. And all of this here is a texture paste which you put on quite thickly and draw into. And then you ink the whole thing up as you would an etching, which is an intaglio method of inking, where the ink is in the recesses, and you wipe the ink off the surface of the plate. So this is why you get the ink into the soft areas of the plate, into the recesses and this grass here, but not on the surface. This one is vignetted, so that the plate shape is this shape, so there's no background on this one. And again, this is a bit more collage based because the feathers are all cut up embossed wallpaper. The big furry feathers are just cut and pasted onto another and sealed really well with a shellac varnish, and then inked up as you would a normal collage. This is the sort of the next stage on for these, because these are intaglio ink. This is relief inked and intaglio inked, and so all the black on that print is relief rolled on. And then I clean the magnolia flowers out with white spirit and intaglio ink them with a magenta sort of oil colour. And then you damp the paper. You need to soak your paper in a bath of water to break the size down in the paper. And then you lay the damp paper over the top of the collage print and push it through an etching press at really good pressure, and it transfers the ink across. Most of the collagraphs are sealed, so this lemon colour on the plate is the varnish, and it gives the plate a longer life. So basically what you do is you collage a plate in reverse, you seal your plate with a varnish, back, front and sides, and then you ink it up, intaglio relief. Collage is very flexible, you can use a variety of methods to ink it up. And then you soak your paper to break the fibres down and make it more flexible so it doesn't tear, because there's a certain amount of embossing goes on when you print. And then you blot your paper so there's no surface water, sandwich it together and stick it through the press at high pressure. And then, ta-da, that's the magic bit. Pull your paper off and you think, yes! There's a high failure rate in collagraphs, but it makes the ones that work very special. It's the same as the cockerel, basically. Both of these are separate plates, so they're free-formed plates. And printmakers tend to get quite anal about registration and things, whereas I don't. So on each of these, although they're a part of edition, they might be further apart. Due to the nature of how they're inked up and You can paint the ink on, which is here. You can roller the ink on, and you can intaglio process the ink as well. They're all very different. I mean, each print, even though it's part of an edition, will be slightly different from the last one. These are dry points. Now, traditionally, dry points would have been done on a metal plate such as copper, and you get a dry point tool, which is a heavy needle, and you basically scratch a line in to the metal. Now, technically, what that does is it pulls a furrow up, a burr, which is just like a ploughed field trench. So you get your trench and then the burr of metal, and it's the burr that holds the ink. Now, I use perspex to do mine, which means you can do your design and put your perspex down on top of it and trace directly through. But the perspex doesn't tend to last very long, and you might have to rework some of the lines later on. Technically, when the burr is broken off, it becomes an engraving because you're filling the line rather than the burr. So I guess you could sort of say these were engravings. But they aren't, they're dry points. And then I hand colour them afterwards. Because if I was a purist, you don't hand colour. You put all the colour on the plate. But these are just fun.